I love that premise. A super mega classic. I love reading about men getting disgraced. Really gross. Oh, I love that. Bleak classics. Classics with sad endings. Classics with a lot of violence. Classics with disturbing themes. Sign me up. Hi, I'm Sam. There's quite literally no one asking me to do this, but today I'd like to tell you about 12 classics I hope to read in 2024 because I am trying to cosplay as a smart person. These are in no particular order, but I think I'll start with the two that I physically own. So the first one is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov and translated by Mira Ginsburg. This was published in 1967. This was written during Stalin's time in power but suppressed in the Soviet Union for decades. Bulgakov's masterpiece is an ironic parable on power and its corruption, on good and evil, and on human frailty and the strength of love. What really intrigued me about this is that the devil and Jesus Christ are actual characters who will be interacting. The devil comes to Soviet Moscow, and he's accompanied by some friends. So we have a fast-talking, vodka-drinking giant tomcat, Behemoth, who I am assuming is gracing the cover. And then he basically creates a whirlwind of chaos. And it brings in this character named Margarita and her beloved, who is a distraught writer known only as the Master. So I think this is going to be political satire, religious satire, and kind of just downright comedy. So I'm really intrigued and interested to get into all of that. But I am admittedly a little bit intimidated by this because this is not an author or region or period in history that I'm very familiar with. So a lot of this stuff might go over my head, but we're going to try it anyway. We're going to do it. Next is The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. This was originally published in 1905. And I also have never read any Upton Sinclair before. This I'm really interested in because this takes place in a slaughterhouse, and I think that this book is interesting to me because it had a real impact on lawmaking in the United States, and a lot of the safe working practices that we have implemented today are in large part due to this book, because this book really shed a light on the inhumane working conditions and the inhumane conditions for the animals as well. So I think this is going to be really gross and probably really disturbing, but I'm still very, very intrigued to get into this. Next is one that I actually started this year and then I just didn't get around to finishing, and my library loan came due before I was able to finish it. So that is A 5-Year Sentence by Bernice Rubens. This won the Booker Prize in 1978. So this is about a woman who is set to retire from her job and she has decided to kill herself. So I think the blurb is like, she looks at her watch and sees that it's 2:30 and she thinks to herself that by 6 p.m. tonight she will be dead. But then her plan to end her life is disrupted when her coworker, as a parting gift for her retirement, gifts her a 5-year diary. So then the character feels compelled to run the course of the diary. So she feels like she can't actually die. She has to live for 5 more years. So there's obviously a hint of humor in that, this idea that you are so impressionable that you would change your literal entire life plan just because someone gifts you a 5-year diary. So I think this is going to be really funny, but also really probably poignant, especially for those of us who are mentally ill. So I'm really looking forward to this one. All right, next we have The Case Against Satan, which was published in 1962. Teenager Susan Garth was a clean-talking, sweet little girl of high school age before she started having fits, a sudden aversion to churches and a newfound fondness for vulgarity. Then one night she strips in front of the parish priest and sinks her nails into his throat. If not madness, then the answer must be demonic possession. To vanquish the devil, Bishop Crimmings recruits Father Gregory Sargent, a younger priest with a taste for modern ideas and brandy. As the two men fight not just the darkness tormenting Susan, but also one another, a soul-chilling revelation lurks in the shadows, one that knows that the darkest evil goes by many names. Sign me up. That sounds good. Next, we have one that I actually just picked up from the library, so I'm hoping to get a start on this TBR as soon as possible. That is The Piano Teacher by Elfriede Jelinek, and this was translated from the German by Joachim Neugroschel. So this was published in 1983, and the author was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2004. This is going to be pretty crazy. So this is about a woman who is a piano teacher, and she starts this illicit affair with one of her students. But I think that the affair becomes even even more depraved when they start to engage in more and more extreme sexual acts and more extreme fantasies. This is me completely speculating. I have no idea, but I just see a lot of people like who read this are deeply disturbed by it. Suddenly, the dark and dangerous passions roiling under the piano teacher's subdued exterior explode in a release of sexual perversity and long-buried violence. So I think this is going to be pretty good. I love when classics are really disturbing. Okay, next we have one that I kind of randomly stumbled on. I don't even remember how I found it, but that is Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. This won the Booker in 1999, and this author has also won the Nobel Prize in Literature. So this is set in post-apartheid South Africa. Coetzee's searing novel tells the story of David Lurie, a twice-divorced 52-year-old professor of communications and romantic poetry at Cape Technical University. Lurie believes he has created a comfortable, if somewhat passionless, life for himself. He lives within his financial and emotional means. Though his position at the university has been reduced, he teaches his classes dutifully, and while age has diminished his attractiveness, weekly visits to a prostitute satisfy his sexual needs. He considers himself happy. However, when Lurie seduces one of his students, he sets in motion a chain of events that will shatter his complacency and leave him utterly disgraced. I love reading about men getting disgraced. Okay, next we have The Blind Owl by Sadegh Hedayat, and this was originally published in Persian in 1936. So this is probably one of the most famous Iranian classics. This novel tells the story of an unnamed pen case painter who, while in despair after losing a mysterious lover, addresses his morbid confessions to a shadow on his wall that looks like an owl. The novel is in two parts. The first is a surrealist, dreamlike narrative of the opium-addicted narrator, the woman he both loves and loathes, and a cackling turban-wearing old man. The second part retells that story in a more realistic tone and includes details that appear to contradict the first part. So I love that premise, that we have a story that's told in the first half and then it's told again in the second half from a different point of view or a different perspective or including more details, and the idea that the stories contradict each other. Oh, I love that. That sounds very, very compelling and exciting. So I'm really hoping I can get to that one soon. Next is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Admittedly, James Baldwin, he's an author I've never read before. And before this year, I hadn't really felt compelled to read him. But then more and more booktubers that I really admire ranted and raved about James Baldwin. This got me thinking that maybe even though he doesn't necessarily always explore super dark themes, that maybe he could still be an author that I would enjoy. And honestly, that's probably me being naive and thinking that he doesn't explore super dark themes. But I guess I'll find out, because I am going to try and read Giovanni's Room. I think why I chose this one specifically is because it does seem a little darker than his normal stuff. The narrative delves into the mystery of loving with a sharp, probing imagination, and he creates a moving, highly controversial story of death and passion that reveals the unspoken complexities of the heart. So what I know about this is that this married man engages in an affair with another man named Giovanni. So yeah, I think we're going to be following him as he's grappling with all of the feelings that come along with beginning an affair, and probably also exploring like themes of sexuality and shame and guilt, but also relishing in the feeling of passion and this new love, this new exciting love or lust. So I'm hoping I like it. I'm hoping I'm not the anomaly and I'm not just like a hater, because James Baldwin definitely seems like a universally loved writer, and I'm really hoping I can dive in and enjoy it as much as a lot of other people have. All right, next we have one that's like a super mega classic. That is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. This was originally published in 1866. I knew I wanted to read more classics this year, so I kind of just did a bunch of searches on the internet of like bleak classics, classics with sad endings, classics with a lot of violence, classics with disturbing themes. And this was one that the synopsis seems right up my alley. So this is about a man who is destitute and desperate. He's a former student who wanders through the slums of St. Petersburg and commits a random murder without remorse or regret. He imagines himself to be a great man, acting for a higher purpose beyond conventional moral law. But as he embarks on a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a suspicious police investigator, the man is pursued by the growing voice of his conscience and finds the noose of his own guilt tightening around his neck. Only Sonia, a downtrodden sex worker, can offer the chance of redemption. This has a lot of themes that I'm very interested in. Senseless violence, the fallout of senseless violence. I'm interested that we're going to be exploring this man grappling with the fallout of this random murder that he commits, and kind of the angel and devil on his shoulders as he's navigating the impact on his idea of what morality is and his image of himself. I am a little intimidated by this one as well, admittedly, just because it was written such a long time ago, not a time period or region I'm very familiar with. There's probably going to be a lot of language that I'm not super familiar with, and it's very long. But I am cosplaying as a smart person this year, as I said, so we're going to do it. Next, I want to read, this is technically a nonfiction, I think. This is more of like an essay. That is Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. So I read a bit of Kierkegaard in college, and that got me really broadly interested in existentialism and epistemology. These classes had a really heavy theology tilt to them as well. So his writings also got me really interested in religious existentialism specifically, and the philosophy of religion. So I love reading about people making a case for their religion and like, this is why God is real, or this is why God isn't real. I think it's just fascinating. I think it's very fascinating to read about people and the way that they make meaning out of life and their relationship with their self, which they kind of build based on their relationship with a God. So anyway, I've been meaning to return to a lot of these philosophers, including Kierkegaard, for a long time, but it's just kind of gotten away from me, and these obviously aren't the easiest texts to read. But yeah, I'm really hoping to remedy that in 2024, because what I've read of Kierkegaard, I've really enjoyed. It's been very thought-provoking. So in this book, Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard wanted to understand the anxiety that must have been present in Abraham when God commanded him to offer his son as a human sacrifice. Abraham had a choice to complete the task or to forget it. He resigned himself to the loss of his son, acting according to his faith. In other words, one must be willing to give up all of his or her earthly possessions in infinite resignation, and must also be willing to give up whatever it is that he or she loves more than God. Abraham had passed the test. His love for God proved greater than anything else in him, and because a good and just creator would not want a father to kill his son, God intervened at the last moment to prevent the sacrifice. I think it's really interesting to try and put yourself in the shoes of these characters who are in these religious stories, and the idea of trying to understand the anxiety that this person must have been going through when asked to sacrifice his own son is really intriguing to me, really thought-provoking. So I am excited to delve more into religious existentialism in 2024. Next we have They by Kay Dick. This is a really short one, and it's one that kind of just recently flew onto my radar. As you read it, you should remember that the men and women who live and die in it might easily be you. They could be snatched out of your hand quite suddenly and pulped. No reason would be given except pure destructive savagery. Those who struggle in its pages to maintain their reason, their sanity, their capacity to love and hope are not so far removed from our own, and as we fondly imagine, unruffled lives. As bureaucracy and governmental control proliferate, Kay Dick pleads for the individual and intellectual freedoms which are so rapidly being eroded. Her book is both a poignant celebration of these values and an anguished caveat. That sounds kind of vague. But I think it's just going to be very dystopian vibes, controlling what people are reading, thinking, writing, talking about, those kind of things. And I'm intrigued. I'm going to read it. Last, we have The Bloater by Rosemary Tonks. So this is about a main character named Min, who is married, but is still being wooed by the Bloater, a huge, luxurious baritone who moves across Europe from one concert platform to another. He irritates her but attracts her enough to worry her, and while mocking him, she finds herself going to friends for help. Claudie, dangerously gay at 60, appropriates the whole affair as a new entertainment. Raquel, a girlfriend, is in turn attracted by the Bloater. Another friend, Jenny, keeps her informed on current morality, but it is in confiding in Billy, an old crony and musicologist, that the danger lies. For here is the male equivalent of Min herself, clever, quick, and gay, and therefore a man she cannot mock or defeat. So I think this is just going to kind of be like a silly, goofy, fun time in the olden days. It's going to be like Sex and the City in 1968. So those are the 12 classics I would like to read in 2024. So you can like this video if you want, comment, subscribe if you want. I would love to have you. And let me know if you are reading any classics in 2024. Have you read any of these classics? Are there any other classics I should have on my radar? What classics are you reading? I would love to hear from you. Let me know. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.